parents as doctors and always have been fascinated by the healthcare space. In fact, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, so I went to Johns Hopkins undergrad. And I guess as I get older and maybe started to understand the economics behind med school a little bit more, I realized maybe I'll find another way to make an impact at a more macro scale in the healthcare space. So I went to work in healthcare consulting. I lived in Washington, D.C. at the time. And I had always wanted to start a company, something I dreamed of since I was a little girl. I was the kind of person who, I joke, my first job was I painted rocks with nail polish and would sell them to my neighbors. And so it had always been a dream of mine. And I was told I had to move to this place called Silicon Valley that I knew very little about. So I said, okay, I'm gonna do this. I booked a one-way ticket to San Francisco from Washington, D.C. I showed up. I was dating someone at the time. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go start a company out there. I'll figure out this idea. I'll go raise money and I'll move back to Washington, D.C. And I showed up and it was a complete disaster. Within 2 weeks of arriving in San Francisco, I spent all my money on a security deposit because, as we all know, rent in the Bay Area is crazy. And my apartment flooded. I was literally homeless. My boyfriend at the time broke up with me and I lost my job. And I was thinking, what the heck did I just do? Like, why on earth did I just uproot my whole life and move out here? And I joke about it now, I can kind of laugh about it, but at the time it was an incredibly difficult time in my life. I remember thinking like, what is my purpose? Why did I do this? I just uprooted my whole life. I have no friends out here. I don't have a job. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no money. And I remember calling my dad and I was like, I literally remember I was like walking in some random parking lot just in circles thinking like, what the heck did I just do? And he was like, hey, like, take a breather and remember all the things that you've been through and how tough you are. Like, you're built for this. You were made for this moment. You are so tough. You're so resilient. Like, put one foot in front of the other and know at the end of the day that we love you no matter what. And in the worst case scenario, you can move home and sleep on our couch. And it was in that moment where I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna go find a therapist because I felt incredibly depressed at the time. And I ended up calling about, 40 different therapists, most of which were not accepting new patients, most of which I could not even dream of affording. I mean, I didn't have a job, I had no money. Finally got connected to someone who agreed to a sliding scale, and I still see that person to this day. And I think the biggest learning for this for me was not about the hardship that I went through at that moment and persevering through it, but the support system I had to be resilient through it. And that's when the antenna went up for me, where I realized not everyone has that. In fact, most people don't have that. They don't have the family or friends or support. They don't have a safety net of knowing they can go move back home and sleep on their parents' couch. And so it was in that moment where I realized not only was it such a difficult experience actually getting connected to a therapist, but more importantly, it was everything in my life that had built up to that moment that allowed me to keep working through it, be so resilient, and finally finding a therapist who I could afford, who would help me through that time. And it made me realize how important it is for everyone out there to build that resilience, to start to have that type of support in their life. And that was really the inspiration behind Modern Health.